Welcome, guys, to the Prowler Podcast. Today, we're thrilled to have one of my great buddies, Brandt Holland, on with us. He's going to dive into his college and professional journey in baseball and also talk about some of the things he's doing inside of his personal life, inside training, and also creating a travel division ball team. He's from Dessler High School, which is in Tuscumbia, Alabama. He brings a unique perspective to the table due to also playing overseas in a couple leagues in Eastern Europe and Western Europe. So I'm going to turn it over to him, and he's going to introduce himself a little bit more in detail. And also just want to thank him for being able to come on with us and share his background and give us some insights on the baseball world of things.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So like Preston said, my name is Brandt Holland. I grew up in Tuscumbia, Alabama. I went to Dessler High School. And then I was able to go on and play at two different junior colleges, Wallace State, Hanceville, and Dyersburg State Community College in West Tennessee, before transferring back to Florence, Alabama, and playing at the University of North Alabama for 2 years and finishing out my school there. After I finished that, I was able to go overseas and play 2 seasons in Germany, 1 season in France. Got to see a lot of the world, got to see a lot of really cool stuff, that I didn't really know I was ever going to have the opportunity to be able to go see. And, kind of getting through everything, from not having a lot of offers out of high school, actually not having any offers, taking a walk on, to having one offer in junior college. Well, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Having one offer my sophomore year of junior college, and then, having a couple offers before deciding to go back to UNA, it was a roller coaster to say the least. So, but getting to get through that and experience everything was really cool.
That's awesome. And, you talk about going to play overseas, and how did that knowledge, help you tailor into what you do now and work in the work field? Like I know it was semi-pro ball, but, we were talking to that Brandon Rembert, which is a Pittsburgh MLB scout, and he would just talk about he never played at the professional level, but due to playing in a small Division I school, he was still able to use the knowledge he gathered over there to, expand to the MLB scout level.
Sure. So, I mean, I think what I've realized over the years is that, baseball is very different from a lot of other sports in the aspect that at every level there's extremely high competition, so whether I was playing junior college ball or Division II ball at UNA, or overseas ball, not to say that it's equal, but to say that it's very competitive at every level that I played at.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously overseas is probably not the, it's not minor league.
Talk about that knowledge from overseas, and how's that helped you tailor into, being a hitting coach and training individuals over here in America now. I know some of the things can bring over here, but something had to start that want up while you're over there playing overseas. So try to talk about that and how, playing over there, the tool and mechanics you got taught over there, you were able to bring back to some of the kids you coach now.
Okay, yeah. I mean, so whenever I was over there, it's really neat, because you're getting a lot of different perspectives. You're playing with, so in Germany, the way the rules work is you only get two import guys, which are people without a European passport.
Mm-hmm.
But you can have as many people with European passports as you want on your team. So I played with guys, from Venezuela that had European passports. I played, with guys all over, the European Union and stuff that all came from different cultures and different backgrounds, culturally, but also baseball wise too. Right. So, you're learning a lot of different ideologies as far as approach at the plate. What are we going to do as far as mechanical stuff? A lot of it is very similar, but also kind of worded different. People think of it different. So I think the biggest takeaway for me is whenever I went over there, I had in my mind that there was really one specific way that you had to hit a baseball if you were going to be successful. Like that's the way I had been taught pretty much my entire life. And then I got over there and realized that's the furthest thing from the truth, that there's a lot of different styles and a lot of different things that maybe my body does this, but your body does that, and we have to find a way to tailor our swing back to our body, so I think that kind of set a hunger in me of I want to try and figure out how do I know how this guy's body works, and then number two is how do I build a swing, how do I help him build a swing that fits his body's movements.
Mm-hmm. And what are some of the things you look for when you get a kid that comes on board? What do you look for in his, like you're saying, because everybody's got a different swing pattern. They're not going to swing. Some people slope a little bit lower than others, so what tool that, kind of mechanisms and mechanics do you look at when you get a new hitter come in for hitting training, and like, how do you build off of that? Just give like an example. You don't got to go much detail, but like.
So for me, my three things are balance, posture, and rhythm. So, rhythm, you can kind of throw rhythm and timing under an umbrella, I guess. So balance obviously starts with your feet, starts with your base, not that that's going to look the same for everybody. There's guys that start really narrow, guys that start really wide. It's all about, are we able to maintain balance through, the load, the stride, the swing? Are we going to be able to maintain balance? Posture is, to me, the number one key of making my bat move where I want it to go, right? If I can keep my body with a good hitting posture, I can control the barrel better. Rhythm and timing, pretty straightforward as far as the timing thing. If you're not on time with a baseball, then you're gonna have trouble hitting it. So we kind of try to break that down into taking back as much control of our timing as we can. A lot of guys kind of let the pitcher dictate their timing at all times, and it's almost like they're playing catch up. And believe it or not, a lot of those guys will think they're out front, but they're actually just reacting whenever they could be establishing some control in their own swing.
Correct. And, you talk about all that stuff, college coaches are going to look at more in detail, as going from the JUCO to Division II level, because a lot of the kids I know that currently play college baseball, they all say with the new transfer portal in an NIL environment, they wish they would have went JUCO before going to the collegiate level. And the reason they say that is because they're not going to be able to have to sit out as much time, because right now they got kids transferring in front of them every year, right? Because those coaches want a more experienced batter that can give them more consistent hits, that's been through the training process with another hitting coach at a smaller school, most likely, right? So you talk about all those mechanics and stuff that you teach these kids, kids got to realize the sooner they start that process, say with you or other hitting coaches, but in this case, that sets them up in a better situation later down the road, especially when they get into the recruiting sector of things, because these college coaches they're tailoring their recruiting approach totally different nowadays. A lot of Power 5 schools are not going for high school athletes anymore.
Sure.
So,
yeah, I mean the transfer portal is definitely, it's definitely changed the recruiting game a lot. It's made it a little bit more difficult on the high school athlete to get that top of the line, Power 5 offer. I think it's definitely made that more difficult. Not that it can't happen. Obviously, there's still a value in a guy that is, if you're talking about a guy that's draft picked, that guy's still going to have his Power 5 opportunities. But I definitely think that, it's like that. It's a trickle effect, right? So, if you have a lot of success in, the mid-major ranks, then, the Power 5 schools are going to be wanting you to transfer there, right? a lot of success in Division II, mid majors are going to want you there, and it trickles on down, right? So I think what it does, is it actually creates a lot of value in guys that can go the junior college route and have an opportunity to not go and sit out, which, I mean, let's be honest, there's not a whole lot of sitting out that's going. If you're sitting out, you're pretty much leaving, like that's kind of the culture that's been created here. You can like it or you can hate it, but it is what it is.
Yep.
So I think that's always my first thing to guys that are kind of looking and trying to figure out where they're going to go to college is, dude, let's make sure that if you're going somewhere, make sure it's somewhere that you're going to be able to go. And I'm not saying being given a spot, but at least make sure that it's a spot you can go and compete to be in the lineup every single day.
Correct.
Because the opportunities are still going to be there later now. Used to you would say that. Used to it's, hey, if you've got one Division I offer and everything else is D2, but you want to be a Division I baseball player, you better take that D1 offer and go and compete and find a way to get in the lineup there. It's not that way anymore.
Well, and a prime example is I don't know if you heard about that Wake Forest kid that started off at a Division II school up in Virginia and then transferred to Wake Forest this past year and got drafted in the second round. I forget his name, but that's a prime example. He realized, where he needed to go to get the playing time, because playing time comes with everything in every sport. More repetition you get, the better you can get.
Sure.
So with him having that mindset, that should show other athletes, hey, if you're given the opportunity to go start somewhere, take that over going to sit on the bench. Because a prime example of that is my one of Will's friends that he graduated high school with. He went to Kentucky because he thought he had to go to the big Power 5 offer, right? Now Kentucky's a powerhouse now in SEC. They're turning the corner pretty sharp. But he quickly transferred out after his first year because he realized he was never going to get an opportunity because he was just going to sit behind the next shortstop that transferred in and so forth. So he transferred to Jacksonville State, and now he just transferred back to Memphis because he's trying to work his way back up. But that's kind of the approach you got to take. It sucks that you can't have loyalty anymore to a university, but also if you want to try to put yourself in a situation that if you have the potential to get to the MLB level, that's kind of the course you got to take.
Well, I think it's definitely a course that is, made available at this point. I also am of the impression that, there are a lot of good players, at the mid-major ranks. You see a lot of mid-major guys get drafted. You see a lot of Power 5. Obviously, Power 5 is going to have a higher volume of guys get drafted. But baseball is also one of those sports that you can get drafted after your freshman or sophomore or junior or senior year. The only way you can go after your freshman or sophomore year, though, is if you're in junior college, right? So a lot of times that's something else people don't really think about is, let's say you're a guy that maybe goes in the, 30th round or 25th round or whatever, but then you've got, if you've got those Division I offers and you're locked in until either A, you turn 21 years old, or B, you complete your junior year of college, right? Or your third year out of high school. So then whenever you're locked in, I mean, a lot can happen in those 3 years too, so I think there's a lot of value for guys that maybe get drafted, but think they could possibly go higher. I think there's a route in junior college for those guys as well to go the junior college route, play 1 year, show a jump in velocity or, exit velocity or, show some sort of significant improvement in year one and see how much higher you can get drafted there.
No, that's exactly correct. And the JUCO route is becoming more and more prominent now across all sport levels because kids are realizing, hey, if I go there, I'll use my eligibility first off. Also, if you're a baseball player, you can get drafted out of there after just one semester. And then, for basketball and football, it's growing because kids realize I can go there and get bigger and better and stronger because they're going to mature more. So it's a growing path for sure. I see all the kids that's came through my service more realizing, hey, that's the approach we got to take. Because at the end of the day, if I go to a community college, I'm not using my eligibility, and also probably will open up more doors as I grow and get bigger. Because heck, we see it all the time now. I mean, football level is a prime example. There's a kid that's got granted his 8th year of eligibility this year at Pittsburgh, and he's going to be 28 years old playing against a bunch of 20-year-olds. So that's a prime example. If you use it to your advantage, you could end up being that guy later down the road, especially with the regulations that are in place now, because NCAA is very relaxed now. There's not much in place that you can't do anymore.
Sure.
So
yeah, no, it's definitely a different world than it was even 5 years ago.
Big time.
So, but I mean, it's kind of like a lot of the great coaches that have always been very adamant, kind of against, I'm gonna say paying players, which I'm not saying that name, image, likeness is exactly the same, but at the end of the day, it's compensation for play. But I mean, you either adapt or you get left behind.
Exactly.
So
right.
I think on the player side of that, you've got to find a way to adapt a little bit as well.
You for sure do, and I don't know if you've heard, but Tennessee, Georgia, and Florida are the first 3 southeastern states to approve NIL at the high school level. So it's coming to the high school level too now. I mean, it's just not college that's going to be at. So we're going to start seeing kids, transfer from high school to high school wherever they could find the best niche at to get their playing time. And if I was back then, I would use it to my advantage too, because whatever high school is going to give me the open door to get that exposure, you got to take it at the end of the day if you do want to go to the next level. So,
yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely, I think you're definitely going to see an uptick in a lot of that over the next few years. I mean, time doesn't go back, right? So
nope.
You can't. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those things. Like I said, you either adapt or you get left behind.
Correct, and that's why I tell all my athletes: you get one shot at the end of the day. Very few people get a second shot. Once you screw up that first shot or make the wrong decision or go down the wrong path, and can't get back to that level. That's pretty much the only shot you get nowadays. Especially with the path that is created nowadays. So, we're talking about the recruiting process and everything of how it's changed. Let's go back to when you were in high school and talk about more of your journey. I know you said you only got one offer out of high school, but kind of talk about that experience, and did you use any kind of like recruiting exposure through camps or anything, or did you see any benefit through that way?
So I did a lot of camps. To be completely honest with you, I went to a lot of different camps that I felt like I was a little bit of a dollar sign. I felt like I was there as a fundraising tool for the university or for the program. And I felt like they had some guys, and kind of knowing how some of that process works now. A lot of times they had guys that were invited personally to those camps, that they kind of knew to look for. I mean, let's be honest. If you're going to a baseball camp and there's 175 people there, you probably, I mean, unless you go out there and you're Derek Jeter or Barry Bonds, you're very likely going to get overlooked. So for me, where I found success was, personalized, reaching out to coaches individually, trying to line up individual or, small group tryouts, workouts with their organization. That's actually how I got my walk-on opportunity my freshman year. Was I had gotten in touch with Randy Putman at Wallace State, and he gave me the option to come down there and walk on, after I went down for a workout and did pretty well, and he said, look, I don't have any money left, but if you want to come walk on, you can come walk on. I was like, heck, I don't have any other options. So I mean, yeah, I'll come play. And, and things went the way they did there. And, but for me, I ended up not getting to play a lot at that stop on my journey. But that year of baseball, I learned more about the game of baseball than I ever did, very likely at any point in my career. So
Mm-hmm.
whenever I left there, I know for a fact I was a better player than I was whenever I got there. And my next stop happened to be Dyersburg State, where it kind of started to come together for me a little bit, and I started to really see some success on the field and more opportunities open up. And from there, it was a little bit of a snowball effect, of how, got his momentum going and got going. So,
And you talk about those camp invites and stuff. One of the things is the Prowler that we do here is we don't force these kids, but we try to give them advice to only attend camps you get invited to, and specifically these college-led camps. Because if you're not invited or that coach hasn't reached out to you, you're just a dollar sign on that sheet of paper, just like you said. You're nothing else to them unless you just go to that camp and completely stand out. Like a Paul Skeens at
right, sure.
Pirates now. So I try to advise all my athletes that come on it to the Prowler, because I at the end of the day, I don't want them just throwing dollar signs at something to get no worth out of it. That's why I'm very hesitant on some of these other miscellaneous camps, that are put on by non-organizations that's not part of a college, because sometimes it just a combine, just be a combine. It's really not, there's not many coaches that are going to attend. There's not much value in it at the end of the day, because at the end of the day, you want to be at a camp that's not only gaining you exposure, because you're not going to a camp to get better. You're going to camp to gain exposure pretty much at the end of the day, in my opinion.
I think that's what you have to decide, right? And I think that's where you have to look at what am I going to this camp for? Is this a camp that I'm going to increase my knowledge base at?
Mhm.
Is this a camp that I'm going to get instruction, or drill ideas, or a better understanding of this? Because I think that there are a lot of camps. I mean, I run a lot of camps, and I don't have any affiliation with a college,
Yeah,
um, but the purpose of my camps is not promoting players; it's progressing players.
correct.
So I think that's what you have to start to find is, are we going to this camp to get better or increase our knowledge base, or are we going to get seen by a college?
Yeah,
Or am I going to get closer to being a college level player, or do I think I am a college level player that wants to be seen? And I
correct.
think if you can answer that question for yourself, because here's my thought: if a coach wants you at a camp because they want to see you play, and they want to see you work out, and they're prepared to offer you a scholarship, you're going to know they're prepared to offer you a scholarship before you go. You're
Oh
not
yeah,
going
without
to show up and have never spoke to this coach before.
yep. Because
That's my opinion.
No, I agree with you on that. And, something my dad told me is, but if you by the time you're a sophomore or junior, you need to be going to camps to get exposure to coaches, because your sophomore and junior year is your most crucial years to get exposure and get recognized by coaches to get ready to get offered. And also, you can, with social media nowadays, it's very easy to notice how a coach is thinking about you. If you get more than 3 coaches to follow you from one university or college, you're most likely on their radar or their board to get recruited and to possibly get offered. It's a big sign, especially if what I try to tell, and this doesn't pertain so much to baseball, but in football, if the position coach follows you, one of the analysts, and then some kind of recruiting analyst, that's typically the sign you're going to get offered. And that's what I tell athletes. You need to pay attention to those keys, because yeah, my service will tailor that approach to you, but you also got to be paying attention to tailor your approach when you go to these camps, and know who to speak to and who to make sure you speak to, because some of these camps you go to nowadays, they're mega camps. They got more than just one college I attended, and you want to go to the colleges and make sure you make a point to speak to those guys, because if you don't make a point to speak to those guys, they'll forget about you. I got several buddies that are at the college level coaching right now, and their DMs are getting blown up every single day by a different recruit. So if you're not constantly staying on their recent feed or their recent message, you could get left out if you ain't that 4 to 5 star player, so.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of, it's not one of those deals where you can kind of sit back, and I think at one point it was. I think the old saying, if you're good enough, they'll find you, at one point was probably relatively true, but that was also in a day and an age where you actually kind of almost had to go and convince people to go and play college athletics, like there was a realistic pushback against that it wasn't always something that someone wanted to do. Now I think every kid that grows up, and plays sports through high school, at some point they're like, yeah, I'd like to go play college baseball, because they just or college whatever, because they just hear that, I mean, crap, look at us. I mean, what do you do on Saturdays in the fall? I mean, like we sit there and we're so consumed by, college athletics, especially in the South. Like,
Yep.
it's the ultimate dream of everybody, to go play at Alabama or go play at Auburn or Tennessee or whatever.
Correct.
And I think, a lot of people get, kind of overlooked because they think, well, somebody will come find me. If I'm good, if I'm as good as I think I am, they'll come find me. They'll give me an opportunity.
That's not how.
That's not necessarily true, But I think some people get kind of, discouraged a little bit because they see these guys that are playing, at Alabama. I'm going to use a football guy as an example. But I mean, we're talking about a guy that's, 5'7", $160, and a really, really good running back, and they're looking at Derrick Henry running the football at Alabama. I mean, they're gonna get a little discouraged, but that doesn't mean that they can't go play college football,
Correct.
and live their dream. They're just gonna have to seek out that opportunity,
No, that's absolutely correct. And you talk about that exposure level. One thing I've noticed, especially nowadays with how big social media is for the recruiting process, is if you don't have a X generated for recruiting purposes and make sure that you got hyperlinks directly to whatever film you have available to these coaches, that's a big hitter, because if a coach finds your bio, first off, they're not going to scroll through your feed to find your highlights. If your hyperlink is there established for whether it's Huddle, YouTube, whatever you use to store your highlights, that needs to be your number one link in your bio, because that link, that coach will be like, oh, let me click this and I'll go look through it. I know several coaches that does that. They say they run across a player that is in their region that they're recruiting, and if their link is in their bio, they'll check it out. But if not, they'll just move on to the next one. So that's one thing that the Prowler we try to do in Taylor is make sure when they come on board, if their bio is not up to date to what our standard is, we go in and revamp that to what it is to make sure they get that exposure. But back to what you were saying, is once you get to that level, I'm trying to think what I was even talking about. I'm about to go to, but no, social media is a big thing, man. And at the end of the day, if you don't have it in place, especially nowadays, especially if you're a 4A and below, it's hard for you to get recognition, because I'll be honest with you, I went to a 6A high school. We had ample resources due to that. But looking back and looking where my brother went to school, which is Briarcrest, it's a well-known school across the whole world. I mean, whole America, is they had a recruiting coach for offense and defense. These 4A schools here in Alabama, Dessler doesn't have that. West Morgan doesn't have that. Any school in Limestone doesn't have that. You go to Hoover, they got coaches that specifically help their players to get recruited. So if you're at one of these smaller schools, you got to think, hey, what is the best way I can get recruited? And a prime example of that is, this is a football kid, but I don't know if you've heard about the kid at Fife, the running back linebacker that's been offered by Georgia and several other schools. Well, his dad purposely pushed him to go to these prospect camps he was getting invited to. Well, he went to the Georgia camp and ran a 4.42. First off, he was a 6'1", roughly 210 running back. It's pretty good size, first off. And you pop off that number at an SEC school, you're going to start turning heads.
Sure.
So, if you're that good, you got to push yourself out there at the end of the day to get that recognition, no matter what sport you're playing, So that's why I try to tell these kids, don't be afraid to, blow up these coaches' Twitter or email. And if you get their phone number, you better stay in their text logs as much as you can, because at the end of the day, if you're not the last one in there, you're getting forgot about, especially if you're from these smaller schools.
Yeah, I mean I think that's fair. I think that I think a lot of times we almost feel bad for kind of maybe blowing up a coach's phone or something like that. But
Mm-hmm.
I think something that's really good to be remembered is their phone's getting blown up anyways.
Correct.
Is your name going to be the one that they see whenever it pops open?
Yep.
Like their phone's going to get blown up. That's any coach that works with a high volume of athletes, and between recruiting, between their own players that they, are coaching at the time, former players that they're staying in touch with, like coaches have probably 30, 40, 50 conversations a day,
Mm-hmm.
that, over text message or phone calls or whatever. Like it only takes a couple of days and you're at the bottom of the shuffle,
Right. And that's that's why I developed this tool, after watching my brother's recruiting journey, which he was on the cusp of COVID and then, the new transfer portal environment coming along, is that the AI tool I've developed, it's going to configure your environment to make sure you try to stay on the top of their list. Whether that's through liking some of their comments or, automatically posting your bio in their comments when they're looking for 25 recruits, stuff like that. Because if you're not constantly, in their bio messages or in their comments or just tagging them in a random post, because when an athlete I have gets invited to a camp or something, I tell them always, whatever coaches you've been in contact with, any invite or anything you get from them, always post and at them. Because not only would that create you more exposure from other schools that are looking at them, but it also will help you stay on their radar if you have not received their offer yet. Because once you create that relationship, you're not – a lot of kids think nowadays, oh, okay, I got this relationship. I don't need to stay on his radar no more. No, that's not how it works. Because, yeah, you got that invite from that coach, but that invite just might mean he wants to see more of you. I've seen it several times happen. These coaches get interested, but the kid doesn't have the eagerness to make that phone call or brave enough to make that phone call. I saw a kid last year. He probably would have got a PWO to Mississippi State, but he never made that phone call on the deadline passed that they could have made it. So he ended up going to NAIA route, and I think one day he will get that chance to play at the Division I level. But now you got to take a different route since he didn't want to make that phone call. So I tell these players, don't ever second guess what you got to do. And I try to lead them in the way, through my journey, through the experience I've got through my brother and other athletes I've helped is, I try to advise the best route and make sure I create that personal connection with their parents and them, because at the end of the day, most parents have never played college ball or any kind of ball, right? I was lucky enough. My dad played in Northern Arizona. Family's been very heavily involved in the sports world. So I was given that exposure, but a lot of kids don't get that exposure. They don't know where to start at.
Right. And I think a lot of times what the athlete might perceive as, they're too nervous to make the phone call or they don't know what to say on the phone call. Coaches know that. Coaches know you don't know what to say the first time you make that phone call.
Correct.
And at the end of the day, if ultimately a coach's job is to help you be better prepared for anything life throws at you after you leave their program.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that a lot of times a coach doesn't mind kind of having that conversation with you. I think that if you'll go in and say, look, maybe he can tell you're nervous. Maybe he can tell that you hadn't made this phone call before and you're trying to figure out how how to navigate this phone call. Like, go make the phone call. They don't care if you're nervous. Go make the phone call, because the way that they're going to perceive that is, if you don't make the phone call, you don't have the eagerness. If you call and you're nervous, they're like, dude, he was obviously nervous, but he cared enough to make the phone call. Like, that's always going to be received well, in my opinion.
Because the coach is going to realize, hey, he's willing to put himself out there,
Right.
I mean,
yeah. And I think that you got to do it. You got to do it.
I mean, talk about that. I'm sure you had to make several phone calls in your journey. You weren't the most star athlete, but you ended up being one of the best athletes that UNA had at the time at Division II level. I mean, didn't you start a catcher for the last few years you were there?
Well, actually, at UNA, I ended up moving over and playing first base. So I played first base the last 2 years there, with sporadic designated hitter roles, but, yeah, I mean, I ended up playing pretty well, but, the UNA route kind of is one of those things for me where I think if I would have made the phone call, because I went to camps. I went to UNA camps. I wanted to go to UNA out of high school. It was right across the river. Like, that would have been awesome. I went the UNA route, or I went the camp route, and I never really made the phone call. I never went and sat down in coach's office and introduced myself, and just walked in and said, hey, my name's Brandt Holland, and I'd like to play here. I'd like to play for you and help you make this program what you want it to be. Like, I just feel like, looking back, if I would have had the confidence to go in and do something like that, then it would have made life a lot easier on me. But I'm one of the guys that got the second chance. But there's a lot of me that don't get that second chance.
Yep. No, that's a prime example. And it's a difficult world out there in the maneuver, and that's why I took the approach to finally launch this business, because there's a lot of kids that go unseen out there every year. There's a lot of kids that give up hope because they don't have the advice from a parent individual to say, some kids don't even have a parent figure in their life to guide them, So, while my package does cost, if I do get a kid like that, I try to, work with them the best I can to whatever approach I can advise them at, If at the end of the day we don't work out to be partners, I'm still going to try to give them the best knowledge I can, for them to be able to exceed at the next level. A prime example is that the running back at Cherokee County last year, amazing kid and very good, talented. Don't know how he didn't go Division I, but there's a lot of things that probably prevented that due to what the new world is out there now. But he reached out to me point blank, told me that he didn't have the money or the funds or didn't have the parents to pay for it. I was like, that's no problem. I still set up a call with him and kind of told him what to do and how to reach out to coaches. And he ended up getting 6 offers after that because he followed my advice, So, just because you don't have the money, I try to advise players to always reach out to me, because if I don't have the knowledge, just like I don't know if that kid ever reached out to you, but I pointed a baseball player to you back in last fall because I knew his hitting was what his weakness was. If he had a better hitting, he was an amazing catcher. I mean, he did the horseshoe realm, everything perfect. Not much got past him, but his hitting was weak. And that's why I pointed it your way, because I was like, if you get in with a hitting coach and you get to a community college as a walk-on, just get there. Because I know Calhoun was asking him to come try out. Is you get that shot and you put in the work, you can tailor your hitting, to get to subpar at least. So your field work, gets there. So it's a thing a lot of athletes struggle with. That's why I try to create this, service, because a lot of athletes do need it and need help getting, advice from a person that's went through it before. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that's, I think that's ultimately why I got into what I do, right? Is I wanted to be able to provide value for for kids as hitters, as players, hitters, catchers, whatever we're working, with that individual on. I wanted to be able to provide value there, but also wanted to be able to provide value, in the intangible things too. Like what are you going to do in this, XYZ situation? how are you going to handle that? And how's that going to affect you down the road? And I think that's one of the things that makes me most proud as an instructor is I get super excited, whenever little Johnny hit a home run this week or whatever. But like that's awesome. But the thing that makes me the most proud is whenever I hear somebody recommend me, whenever whether it be on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, somebody recommends me and says, you know, really, really good hitting coach, but more importantly, he's a guy that you want your kid to be around, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and I think that means more to me because that means I'm teaching something bigger than baseball, and I think giving advice is so much more about somebody else and helping them succeed than it is, trying to succeed for yourself, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that's always been a goal of mine is to care more about the success of others than the success of myself.
No, that's absolutely correct. Because my end goal is to grow my business, but I also want to give back to the community. Because there's a lot of athletes and kids that get going down the wrong path because they don't got the direction. And sports world saves a lot of athletes every year from going down that path. So the more exposure I can create and push them towards this kind of thing, if this is what they want to do, it can eventually save their life. If they do go play college football and get out of the environment that they're in, a lot of kids come from a rough neighborhood or something that they can benefit from going to college to get an education, but to also get to that level. So no, you're exactly right. To leave that lively impact on a kid is a lot better than getting them to, not only be a better athlete, but a better person. So.
Absolutely.
So, but with that being said, we do a Prowler Spotlight here at the end of every podcast. And this week I thought it'd be cool to talk about because I know that at the MLB level, they're talking about bringing AI robot as an umpire behind the plate. I don't know if you've heard about that. Have you?
I've heard the talk about it.
What's your take on it? I mean, you play catcher for some time, I know a lot of the catchers are not too happy about it because they think it's going to take out, some of the feelings that they have with it, and it's going to be not
I
as.
think it takes some of the control away from the catcher position, in particular. One of the things we work a lot on is receiving and call it framing,
Yep.
and basically trying to take that pitch that's borderline striking ball and present it in a way that we get it called a strike,
Correct.
and I
Because at the
think
end,
that's ultimately like one of the best feelings is whenever a ball's off the plate and you do a really good job with it and you get a strike call. I think it takes that away. Now, do I think that from a quote unquote fairness standpoint, do I think that you take there's going to be no error, right? I mean, that
yep.
there would be no error on balls and strikes. At the end of
Correct.
the day, I think that's probably all that it's going to be able to do right now is balls and strikes.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously they have the technology because we all see the little box on TV when you turn on a baseball game,
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that they could get balls and strikes more accurate. Do I think I think there's something to be said for being able to kind of earn the trust of the umpire as a catcher, and
Yep.
you're back there and you're working, and then all of a sudden you get that ball that's, a ball and a half off the outside corner because of the way you've earned it for the past 4, 5, 6 innings. So I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it.
Yeah. No.
Probably depends if you ask me the hitter or ask me the catcher. You ask me the hitter, I love it.
Exactly.
Yeah, me the hitter, I love it. I think it's awesome. Let's do it. But me the catcher, I'm not a huge fan.
Yeah, because it would take out my split journey I had as a pitcher in high school. I was lucky to have a pretty solid catcher for part of my journey. And he he did an amazing job at framing it. And, a lot of umpires, sometimes they can catch it, sometimes they don't. It just depends on how long they've been doing it, and et cetera, and at the MLB level, I feel pretty confident that most of them are going to be, pretty right on, because they got trained to do this. They went through a lot of training to be an MLB umpire at the end of the day. And I just feel like adding an AI robot to that not only takes a true feeling out of baseball, but it takes a lot more out of it, from a pitcher and catcher standpoint.
I think it takes the human margin for error out of the, and I think that's a part of the game that people will grow to miss, even though they think they won't. They'll grow to miss, and I think that you're probably taking some of the excitement. I mean, at the end of the day, who doesn't love having the umpire to blame on a loss?
Exactly.
Everybody, every fan ever, every time you lose a game, it's ump's fault, right? I mean,
because at the end of the day, who's the coach?
I think the fans probably suffer more than anybody.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, who's the coach going to go run out there yelling at to get ejected from the robot that's standing on
a computer?
Yeah, like that's no fun to see. You want some tension every now and then as a fan. So I think it's I don't know. I mean, the way the world is going right now, we're pushing AI in every sector of life we could think of. And I just think it's, to go back to a personal level, I just think it's going to make America more lazy. We don't need that as it already we got. So it's
I think as long as it remains a tool, I think it's great, right?
Yeah, because if you think about it, the tool side of the thing, it can help a player tremendously in his mechanics from a hitting perspective.
Sure. Absolutely.
And granted, that's not going to become available to a lot of players at the high school or college level. Yeah, granted, some SEC schools is going to have access to it because they got the funds to do it. But if you go to a Division II school, you're not going to have that exposure. But it's I think it'll be a huge tool. And it's going to continue to grow. We see it every day. Not only in computer programming now, but we see it. At the airline level. You got kiosks nowadays. You don't have to go to a physical person to get checked in anymore. So, to you saying, man, it's it can be used in a good way. We just got to tailor it that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
But thank you, Brandt, for being on our podcast this week. Very good information, and thank everyone for tuning in. We look forward to continue to expand our awareness of our platform, and looking forward to partnering with those who are serious about playing their sport the next level. And our weekly quote this week is by Archie Griffin. He said, "It's not the size of the dog in the fight, but it's the size of the fight in the dog." And that goes back to a lot of points we touched on in today's podcast. Because you could be the tallest player out there, but if you don't have the fight inside of you to push yourself, you will never get to that point. So, we look forward to talking to y'all next week. And as always, Prowler up.